Well, I'd like to start talking about the northeastern portion of Southwest Asia, or the Middle East. And this is an area that most of us have heard about often on the news, and it's made up of primarily the countries of Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkey. Now, this area, believe it or not, has historically been some of the first places for society, and at one point on Earth, or more, the best places to live on Earth. Seriously, the best schools, the best palaces, the best universities, the best in the whole world. Today on the news we see all these dusty images of the war, and it's not pretty. So let's talk about that. Now, Mesopotamia is this kind of weird word. It means a land between two rivers. And those two rivers are the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And along those two rivers, between those two rivers, is really, really good soil. We're talking really good soil, some of the best in the world, almost like the Nile River. And it's been home, that valley has been home to so many different empires throughout world history. The Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Chaldeans, just to name a few. Please look at this image, the map over here. It talks about all of these different empires and can kind of show you where they are. For those of you that know the stories of the Bible, this is where most of those stories took place. They say that Ur is where Abraham actually lived. And some people think that when they talk about the Great Flood, it was in this area. And when other people talk about the Garden of Eden, they're thinking it's right down in this area, which was a giant wetlands until Saddam Hussein dried them up, which we'll talk about at the end of this chapter. So down here I have some images. Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers. You can see these two rivers and all the ancient kingdoms and cities in that area. Tons of ancient artifacts and statues and castles and almost pyramid type things called ziggurats still exist. Alright, so one group of people that live in this area are causing quite a bit of stir, and they are the Kurds. I know it sounds kind of silly, it reminds us of cheese curds at the state fair, but what we're talking about is a group of people, and their ethnicity is called the Kurds. They are the largest ethnic minority in Southwest Asia. And currently they're a stateless nation, which means a people without an actual country. There's enough of them, 25 to 30 million people, that they could actually make up their own country, and if they could, it would be called Kurdistan. Now if you look at the image to the right, they are made up and spread out over the countries of Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. But about half of them live in Turkey, so much so that they make up 20% of the Kurdish population. Looking at this image, you can see the Kurdish people. In the dark green areas is where they primarily live, and you can see they're spread out between all of those different countries. But you can see how they could make Kurdistan by just drawing around the darker green lines. And people would be pretty happy because that would be their own country, and then they'd be a state, nation state. Now, being a minority throughout history, they've had some problems. Now, the Ottoman Turks took over that area, and then when they became the country of Turkey, their new leader, Kemal Ataturk, seen here in a very patriotic picture, he wanted his new country of Turkey to be very strong. He was extremely patriotic. Everything was about new Turkey. And so anybody that spoke other languages besides Turkish, those things were outlawed. It was illegal. And anybody who was speaking a different language, especially Kurdish or, say, Armenian, they thought that that was a threat to their government, and so they would throw people in prison for doing those kind of things. So being different and non-Turkish in this new country of Turkey was a huge problem. But remember, the country of Turkey was drawn on top of the people who already lived there. So it's caused some problems. Now, how did the Kurdish people react? Well, the Kurdish people want their independence, just like any of us do. So they formed groups of people who they consider to be freedom fighters, and the Turkish people consider to be terrorists. One group is called the PKK, and they're an armed separatist movement. Now, most normal people, most normal Kurds, don't support them because they think that they're out there and they're a little too extreme. But you know what? They're the only ones who are really fighting for a broadish Kurdish cultural and economic political rights in this area.